What are you looking for? You hear some version of that question all the time. Shopping for a used car, what are you looking for? Wandering around on vacation in a friendly, unfamiliar city, what are you looking for? Searching in the stacks of the Enoch Pratt Library for that book you looked up in the database, what are you looking for? It's also the question you have to answer if you're a part of the 19% of internet users using dating apps. What are you looking for? Some of the answers there, I can tell you, are really specific. I'm looking for a man between 5'10" and 6 feet whose profile pictures were taken within the last 2 months, who owns his own home and car, cooks, cleans, never voted for Trump, and doesn't have young children. Okay? Or I'm looking for my prince to enjoy sunsets and travel and lots of cats and a sickly hamster, doting on me as much as I dote on him. Some responses to that question can even sound a little hostile. I'm looking for someone who doesn't lie or cheat like my last girlfriend. What are you looking for can be an intimidating question to someone who is unaccustomed to seeking out someone as you would an appliance at the home store. I think the two disciples could probably relate. Jesus asks them what they're looking for, and they cannot give a clear answer. They respond with another question: where are you staying? They could have said, we're looking for meaning in our lives. We're looking for a job that pays a living wage. We're looking for a teacher to help us understand God and life. But all they can muster is another question. It's like they can't answer the question, and so they offer another question, hoping that it might lead them a little closer to an answer of their own. The poet Rilke was onto something when he wrote to a younger poet, "I want to beg you as much as I can, dear sir, to be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart, and to try to love the questions themselves like locked rooms and like books that are written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers which cannot be given to you because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps we'll then gradually, without notice, perhaps you then will gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. Live the questions now, according to Rilke. John's gospel complicates that even further as he suggests that the most significant question you learn to love is Jesus himself. Jesus isn't so much the answer to well-formulated questions that people like you and me bring from our daily living, but the person who gives rise to the questions worth asking. And most of us don't even realize that when we first meet Jesus. We don't accept him after we have understood him. We just follow him enough to be intrigued about what he is up to. In John's gospel, nobody really understands who Jesus is at first. John the Baptist says he doesn't even know Jesus. I did not know him, but I came baptizing so that he might be revealed. Follow Jesus, and you'll find out what questions are worth asking about life and death and hope and grace. Now, because I was born into the church like many of you, it took me a long time to figure out that most of my questions about life actually come from being in relationship with Jesus. There never was a time in my life where I wasn't burdened by questions like, how are you going to contribute to the world? Who is your neighbor? How then shall you live? What then shall you sacrifice? What are you called to give? What does love look like and feel like for you and for others? There was a time when I tried to separate those questions from religious faith, and sometimes I still wish I could. You don't have to be a follower of Jesus to ask these kinds of questions. And some who are not followers of Jesus do a better job of answering them than those of us who call ourselves disciples. But I could never get away from Jesus. Disrupting polite company as the liturgy goes, a savior with a bad reputation, called a glutton and a drunkard by religious snobs, hounded by the state, rejected by the pious, less concerned with religion per se than with people living out their purpose, which naturally meant in the presence of the living God. Funny, I thought I had left Jesus behind in college when I declared my major, history with a concentration in contemporary social movements, the Russian Revolution, the Solidarity movement in Poland. By that time, I had decided that the sluggish, conservative Christian heritage of my youth I could leave behind in favor of conversations on Marxist revolution over cigarettes and coffee house music. And then one week, while studying the civil rights movement, I came across a book called Parting the Waters by some journalist guy named Taylor Branch. Never heard of him. I was mesmerized and stayed up most of the night, unable to put down the book, confronted by the realization that the person who was keeping me up most of the night, Dr. King, was a preacher, a disciple of Jesus, who himself had struggled and continued to struggle with questions of meaning in his youth, frustrations with the church, and hopes and dreams about loving and being loved. Jesus keeps a hold of us, some of us, whether we like it or not. And I know that this kind of wrestling isn't just my experience. I know lots of you have tried to quit Jesus. You're more spiritual than you are religious. You hate it when we drag out the Apostles' Creed. You sometimes wake up on a Sunday morning and decide you'd rather veg out with Netflix, scroll through TikTok, or just take a hike. You occasionally allow yourself to dream about becoming as rich as Elon Musk and imagine that you would be more like Oprah and less like him if you were in their position. You fantasize over what it would be like not to be disturbed by the inequity in our city, the homelessness on our corners, or the racism that sometimes flares up in your own heart. You've had more of a charismatic religious experience at a Bruce Springsteen or Beyonce concert, and you wonder what kind of sadistic freak invented that sorry excuse for a chair called a pew that you are sitting in right now. And yet you keep coming back to hear him, to investigate the places where he goes, the people that he dares to see. You keep coming back to hear that question, what are you looking for? Though I doubt you are any better at answering it than the disciples. What are you looking for? Peace and happiness and pleasure? Well, yes, but also something like justice? Well, yes, but you know too much about your own imperfections and failures, so also forgiveness and mercy. And don't forget about hope. Don't ever forget about hope. The best answer I can give to that question is that I'm looking for life. And life is more than one thing, unable to be reduced to a set of principles or practices or propositions. Sometimes I have a hard time explaining that to my friends outside of the church. Principles and propositions about life, death, or meaning is where they often want to start. Often I join them in their wonderings. What does bring happiness? Pleasure for oneself, service to others, somewhere in between? Good philosophical questions and conversations always ensue. But when I'm really honest with myself, It is impossible for me to approach any of those questions in a blank slate sort of way. Jesus has already shaped my mind to know what questions are the ones worth asking. He's the person I know to follow to see what questions to wrestle with about life and death and hope and love and heartache and loss and grief and dying and rising to life again. It's the relationship that matters to me the most. It's the relationship that I need the most to keep me accountable to my purpose, to free me from the shackles of consumerism or racism or sexism or whatever ism has dug its tendrils into my brain or my heart. And when some of those giant forces that are beyond my control dig in even deeper, it's the relationship that I need to hold me fast. Dr. King told us about that relationship when he thought about quitting in his sermon entitled, Our God is Able. It was toward the beginning of the bus boycott in Montgomery when threatening phone calls and letters started to arrive at Dr. King's home, increasing in intensity until he realized that the threats were dangerous and real, and so was his fear. A late-night phone call after a long and stressful day brought him to the breaking point. In this state of exhaustion, he said, when my courage had almost gone, I took my problem to God. My head in my hands, I bowed over the kitchen table, and I prayed aloud. The words I spoke to God that midnight are still vivid in my memory. I am here, taking a stand for what I believe is right, but now I am afraid. The people are looking to me for leadership, and if I stand before them without strength, they too will falter. I am at the end of my powers. I have nothing left. I have come to the point where I can't face it alone. At that moment, Dr. King said, I experienced the presence of the divine as I had never experienced before. It seemed as though I could hear the quiet assurance of an inner voice saying, stand up for righteousness. Stand up for truth. God will be at your side forever. Almost at once, my fears passed from me. My uncertainty disappeared. I was ready to face anything. The outer situation remained the same. Hear him. The outer situation remained the same, but God had given me inner calm. 3 nights later, Dr. King wrote, our home was bombed. Strangely enough, I accepted the word of the bombing calmly. My experience with God had given me a new strength and trust. I knew now that God is able to give us the interior resources to face the storms and problems of life. Let this be our ringing cry, that there is a great benign power in the universe whose name is God, and God is able to make a way out of no way and transform dark yesterdays into bright tomorrows. This is our hope for becoming better people. This is our mandate for seeking to make a better world. Friends, Jesus invites us into a relationship to help us become our full selves, not only for our sake, but for the sake of the world. To follow that mandate to make the world a better place. And I don't know how life is going to unfold this particular year. What public fights some of us might have to get into to make the city a better place. What inner struggles some of us may have to face to adapt to the changing climate or to another loss that you didn't expect. But I know from the last 3 years of my life that we don't ever have to walk through any of it on our own. We've got a Savior who will meet us at the kitchen table, fearful and alone in the middle of the night. We've got a Savior who will meet us in the winters of our grief, where the best of what we have loved has been lost or taken away. We've got a Savior who will wipe away our tears when voices around us can say only who sinned, this man or someone else. We've got a Savior who sees the longing in our hearts for a better world, a richer life, and invites us to come and see where he is living, what he is doing, where he is going, and is prepared to take us. What are you looking for?